What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for the UFC 259 review, of course. Now, I do apologize that's a couple of days late. Had a couple of off days, Monday, Tuesday, but we're back now. And I wanted to get this done in before we get to UFC Vegas 21 at the weekend, where obviously Leon Edwards returns after, a year and a half outside the octagon. But we go back to Saturday night, of course. Jan Blachowicz put on a phenomenal display against Israel Adesanya. Before the fight, on the preview, I was saying how I am a huge Adesanya fan. And you saw the dismay almost on social media. There was a commentary bias that I think towards Israel Adesanya, which I think it is very poor from the UFC and a broadcasting aspect, because it does dictate how fans perceive the fight. And when the scorecards do get read out, you can see why people call it a robbery as such. But at the same time, I do feel for them. They've obviously been on the broadcast for 7 hours. They've been doing a whole lot of stuff, and obviously they're there watching the fight. And Israel Adesanya does come with that greatness. He was coming in as the underdog, but he was also coming in as the guy with that flair, with that goal to becoming champ status in the era of greatness. And sometimes when the narrative comes along, I do think we get drawn into the narrative, that it does become almost, we focus so much on one fight with Adesanya. We focused on it with Ronda Rousey and Amanda Nunes. It was always about the return of Ronda Rousey, rather this new breed of champion, Amanda Nunes, coming in. And I think it was at the same point this weekend with Adesanya. I think the fact that it was him, had it been a Bellator Teixeira, had it been maybe a Dominic Reyes in a rematch, I think Jan Blachowicz would have got a lot more credit and a lot more grace for his performance on the night by the broadcast team and maybe, the media and fans as a whole. But Jan Blachowicz put on a phenomenal display, and he comfortably beat him. And okay, yes, the 10-8 rounds were a bit far-fetched, but at the end of the day, the right person won the fight, and there was no disagreement in the result of the fight, maybe just the scorecards alone. But he put 2 fantastic takedowns in round 4 or 5 that comfortably won the fight. I gave Adesanya round 3, I believe, but I think and thought that Jan Blachowicz had won every single round apart from that, and it showed why he is the light heavyweight champion. It showed why there's weight categories, that showed why there's a lot of difference going from 10 pounds to up to 20 pounds. Obviously, we saw Henry Cejudo, Amanda Nunes, and obviously Conor McGregor go up and have great success moving up to 10 pounds. Obviously, DC moved up, I think it was 30-40 pounds when he won the heavyweight title on the night. So I guess DC is the outlier in that aspect, but again, he was a natural heavyweight who was originally heavyweight, cut down to light heavyweight, and then got back up to his original weight class. So I guess you could almost relate DC to what TJ Dillashaw tried to do rather than the rest. The fact that he was an original heavyweight, went down to get that title first, and then came back up, obviously due to his friend Cain Velasquez being heavyweight champion at the time. But to focus on Saturday night, again, the Polish power is legendary, and it showed. And I was thankful that I didn't see Adesanya get cleaned out. It's unfortunate that we see him to lose his own, but he made a fantastic point that I think the model of boxing is broken. That ability to look at a loss on someone's record and give them credit for trying, give them credit for stepping in there, and it doesn't ruin the fighter. There's very few in MMA at least that are undefeated. Obviously, Khabib was 29-0. Maybe shall move to 30-0, but I think that's a huge risk. And with him being the outlier, I do want to see him to remain retired. So we can say we've seen, greatness at that level, and remain undefeated. But for Adesanya, 20-0 or 20-1 now, should we say? I do think he comes back from this. I'm just going to go back down to 185 in the natural weight class. He's probably going to fight. If Till has a fantastic performance against Vettori, he'll probably fight Darren Till. But most likely it's going to be Whittaker or Costa again. Obviously, Jokin is coming off the loss to Whittaker, so you can't really give them a title fight. And Whittaker deserves it being a former champ. And obviously, Costa did some bad blood there. Maybe he wants to get it back and have a night where he's not drunk wine the previous night to try and help him sleep. And maybe sober Costa will remain undefeated. But for Jan Blachowicz, obviously next in line is Glover Teixeira. Many thought he deserved the challenge, at least on Saturday night first. But obviously, when you got Adesanya, who's a pay-per-view star, and probably one of the biggest top 5, I would say. It looks like he's done about 800,000 pay-per-view buys, which is huge. Obviously, it's not Conor McGregor who I hate. Masvidal numbers do, tip the scales on pay-per-views over 1 million. Obviously, it's not Nate Diaz or Brock Lesnar's, but for what we've got right now, Adesanya is probably the future of the pay-per-view star. We've got John Jones coming back heavyweight. He should be a pay-per-view star, and Garner could be, should he become heavyweight champion. But, Nunes should be a pay-per-view champion in a run round. I think she is. But obviously, they are a little bit reluctant maybe at times to put on as a main event. She's always a co-main event, isn't she, of the card? Which is fine. She is the greatest of all time. She carries a lot of weight to her name. But yes, a fantastic performance from Blachowicz. We'll have a look at the results now, of course. 184 strikes out of 276, 107 of them significant, of course. 3 out of 5 takedowns, 2 of them sublime in that 4th and 5th round, 1 apiece. That earned him the win in that victory, and that was really where we saw Adesanya's maybe not weakness, because he's been very good with the ground game, with his takedown defense. He's always been very good, but maybe that difference, between the power of the 185er and a 205er, who was 220 on the night, most likely, it just showed where that difference was. I think UG Behrman and Adesanya has taken this loss very admirably. They've responded perfectly to the loss. Obviously, Adesanya there, 99 strikes out of the 182 and 78 out of 161. So yeah, I think we can all agree that it was a confident win for Jan Blachowicz. Adesanya had some good moments, but across the board, Blachowicz, put on the better fight and the better performance, and there's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes it happens on the night. Now, Adesanya has been talking about a rematch. I think we probably do see him move up to 205 again, but I wouldn't like to see it for the next 2 years maybe. Obviously, if he beats Till, he's probably cleaning out the division fully. There's obviously Kevin Holland if he beats Derek Brunson, who's coming up. So it depends on what he wants to do. He can defend that belt for as long as he wants, I think. But I do see him wanting to avenge this, I think, as well. But again, it'll be something where he probably needs to take 6 months, 7 months out, from the 185 pound, then to bulk up to 220 so he can cut down then to 205. And I think he's got it in him. He just didn't do it this camp because obviously what had gotten him to this point and so far, hadn't seen any sort of results that needed changing or warranted changing. But now he's learned this and can move forward from it. Now, we move on to Amanda Nunes, of course, the greatest of all time, has probably shut down the women's featherweight division. Obviously got one fight between Felicia Spencer and Danielle Worth going on at the end of April or in May, I believe. And it's in a very tough spot. Obviously, if Danielle Worth wins that fight, she's 2-0 and probably the number 1 contender at that point. And you don't want to see a 2-0 raw veteran or a raw talent who's, I think she's in her late 30s or mid 30s at least, coming up against Amanda Nunes, who's killed everyone that she's faced pretty much. It wouldn't be a fair fight. And a lot of people were saying that Megan Henderson was in deep waters going to this weekend. Danielle Wolf, should she beat Felicia Spencer and get a title shot, would be even deeper waters. It's just not a fight we need to see. There's only really 2 fights there to be seen, but they're a year or 2 away, which obviously Kayla Harrison and Clarissa Shields. It does beg the question whether Nunes has done all she can in the UFC. Obviously, it looks like she could be fighting Julia Pena next. But I wonder how much of the could almost go on a belt collection. Obviously, Chris Cyborg, who she took the featherweight title off, is the only Grand Slam champion. It'd be interesting to see if Nunes eyes that up and maybe looks at PFL and goes, maybe there's an opportunity there to pick up a belt. Maybe go to Bellator, do the rematch with Cyborg. But she's making a lot of money. She's the top star for the women's roster at the moment at the UFC. She's defending both belts and doing it phenomenally well. She only landed 18 strikes. She only needed to, and then she got that submission win in the first round against Megan Anderson, who's obviously now departed ways with the UFC, and we'll talk about that, soon. But she's just phenomenal to watch, and I think she's getting into that conversation now where, regardless of gender, she's one of the greatest of all time. She's probably close to getting on that Mount Rushmore. She probably deserves to be on that Mount Rushmore. Being the only two weight champion simultaneously to defend the belts on repeated occasions. I think she's had 1 defense at bantamweight since becoming champion, and obviously now 2 at featherweight, and she's probably going to have another one at bantamweight in the summer or in September, autumn time. For Megan Anderson, we're getting to Megan Anderson. I do think we'll probably see her at Bellator in 145, but I did put a tweet out yesterday. If you want to go follow her, Mitchell, ivy_. That, she's got a lot of opportunities. And it'll be interesting to see whether she, if I was PFL right now, I'd be looking at that division at featherweight going. There's an ESPN Plus audience there that we can grab, and build a 145-pound league. We've seen Kayla Harrison drop down to 145 in Invicta and Titan, I think it was. So it's really interesting what's next for her. If I was PFL, I'd probably sign up all featherweights from the UFC and almost make it, make their own league. Or Megan Anderson, could she potentially go up to 155? She is a very tall, very sort of long athlete, obviously standing 6 foot tall. Be interested to see if she could put another 10 pounds on, because I do think she is a talented fighter. She's a former Invicta champion. It'd be interesting to see how she could go up against the likes of the likes of Kayla Harrison, the likes of those fighters in that PFL lightweight division. I think with Kayla Harrison, obviously Harrison's a former Olympic wrestler, so I think maybe that would get a little ugly. But obviously there's no elbows in the fight for PFL, so it's a little cleaner, a little less gritty, and it would be an interesting battle. Obviously there's Julia Budd, Chris Cyborg, as we mentioned. You've got Liam McCourt over at the 145-pound division. In Bellator, maybe that's probably a more suitable home for the featherweight division from the UFC. And for Megan Anderson, the likes of Felicia Spencer, who did go fight 3 rounds off with Cyborg, I believe, and it looked okay doing it. She did get beaten up pretty bad, but she survived the contest, as she did with Amanda Nunes. But yes, I do think the featherweight division's come to a close, at least for a brief period, until we can get some talent in there. But for me, I think Nunes' home is at bantamweight again. Even that's difficult, because she's cleaned out that division. She's beaten Holly Holm, she's beaten Jermaine Durand, she's beaten so many names in there. Obviously, I do think Julia Pena's down at 6, and we're going. She's the number 1 contender next, just because there's a lack of competition up there. Obviously, Aspen Ladd, should get a fight for the title within the next year or 2, but she needs to get back into winning ways, as does Irina Aldana. Obviously, Yannick Kunitskaya, former title challenger, against Cyborg, probably deserves maybe a title shot after her next win. She won last weekend, didn't she? So maybe if she gets one more win in the column, she's next. Obviously, Holly Holm's injured from that Pena fight, and that's probably why it makes the most sense to make Nunes Pena. But yes, looking at the results, of course, 19 out of 26 strikes, 18 of them significant, 2 out of 5 there for Megan Anderson, 0 out of 1 takedowns. So obviously the sublime submission that made it an easy night for her. Megan Anderson looked, with all due respect to her, she didn't look like she wanted to beat her on the night. She looked very pale, like she hadn't slept. She looked very weak, and maybe it must be weird walking into an empty arena. I think some people thrive there. I think some people want that buzz of the crowd to perk them up a little bit, especially if they're on and off night. It can give them an extra 10%, which is more than just enough. So yeah, it's a tough place to be, and it's a tough spot for the whole featherweight division. But again, I think we're coming to the close of it, and that puts us on nicely to the bantamweight division. And it's got a bit ugly in the bantamweight division. Obviously, we saw what happened with Aljamain Sterling pick up the DQ win, become the bantamweight champion. Now, however you look at it, if you disagree with that, that it should be no contest, that Jan should still be champion, the championship should be vacant. By the rule set that we go off, Aljamain Sterling won that title fight and deserved to be champion. Now, he put on a fantastic display. He put on a fantastic first round. I think he won the first round, actually, apart from the drop from Petr Yan, which might have edged on the scorecards. But Petr Yan needed him in the face, and it was very, very clear. And, I think the broadcast team did a very good job on this, that the referee should have pulled him out there. You don't give the down opponent the opportunity. I think it's down to the referee and the doctor to really make that call. So obviously, every fighter is going to say they want to continue, unless you're maybe Diego Sanchez, perhaps. But every fighter is going to want to continue, especially in a title fight. You saw him burst into tears when he had won the title fight, after it had been called off. And you don't see that from a champion. You don't see almost a disappointment from the champion, or from the elect champion, should we say, after a title fight. But Aljamain Sterling, I think he deserves a lot of respect. He put in a fantastic, he put 2 camps in, I think, for this one fight against Petr Yan. Obviously, the first one got cancelled at 256 or 255. Obviously, it got moved back till 259. And it is one of those. But I do think the amount of disrespect and abuse that Aljamain Sterling's caught online is very uncalled for. He doesn't deserve the criticism. He he didn't put himself in a place to get kneed. It's on Petr Yan who threw the illegal shot, who was the champion going into that, let's not forget. So he should, he knows the rule set. And whether there was a miscommunication, whether there was just a rush of blood to the head of Petr Yan in that fight through fatigue. He was overtaking the fight as well, which is what I think makes it bittersweet for Jan, because I think he was winning those, he was probably 2 rounds up to 1 up. I know the scorecards had him, or at least 2 judges had him 2-1 up going into the 4th. The other had Aljamain Sterling 2-1 up, so it was a very close fight. But I do think, Jan was starting to take it. Sterling was fatiguing, and it might, work for Sterling's favour in the long term, because obviously he's going to go back from that. He's going to properly dissect what happened in that fight. He said he had an off night himself, but he put on a phenomenal pace. It's just whether he can, almost extrapolate that over 5 rounds, because it was very diluted into the first 3 rounds, and then he, came onto that 4th. At the end of the 3rd and the 4th, he looked very tired, and it was just purely maybe heart and mental toughness that was getting through. But he continued. He walked away champion. The interview was very concerning, but he seems to be good. He's going to take some time out. I'll probably see them rematch in the summer, late summer, August, maybe September. Obviously, with the photos online with him and Cejudo, not a good look for him, especially after how he won the fight. And I can probably see why. Fans aren't too happy to see that, because obviously Petr Yan should get the title, the rematch with how the fight planned out, and he will do. But, Aljamain Sterling did say it, and I was watching the Matt Clive and a fantastic interview from the Matt Clive with Aljamain Sterling. He was just, trolling, doing what he's doing. Obviously, he was probably concussed on the night. He wasn't celebrating. His team was celebrating, and his people were celebrating. So they travelled out there. It was more them celebrating rather than him, and then maybe him having a little bit of fun online, which didn't go down too well. But we'll see. And obviously, Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling are still going back and forth. So it's going to continue to bubble up, continue to bubble over. And the bantamweight division is still incredible. And, I think as DC who said, it only really, affects Corey Sandhagen in this scenario. Because obviously he was probably going to be next in line for the shot, especially if Petr Yan had won. Sandhagen would have definitely been in line for a title shot. He's going to fight TJ Dillashaw now. It's going to be interesting where that goes from there. But yeah, it's a tough one. But I feel sorry for Aljamain Sterling, the amount of abuse I've seen online. As I do for Megan Anderson, she's another fighter who's received a lot of backlash, a lot of, unneeded and unwarranted disrespect. Now we move on to Islam Makhachev, who looked phenomenal against Drew Dober. Getting that arm triangle choke in the 3rd round, he looked, he's a problem for this lightweight division. And I was thinking, let's get him up against Tony Ferguson. I think that's the fight to make. He deserves a big fight. He deserves a 5-round main event probably, and Tony Ferguson can do that. It could be a 3-round co-main event maybe. Maybe put it on the Dustin Poirier card. If we get a trilogy fight, put Makhachev on that card. Obviously, you've got Khabib in the building with McGregor and Poirier. I think that would work very well. Obviously, Tony Ferguson's there. And, Tony Ferguson coming off the back of 2 losses against Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. He's not in a good spot right now, but if he came in, defeated Islam Makhachev in a very dominant fashion, or, just to get back in the ring column of 30-27, let's say, it will do him the world of good and put him back, if Tony Ferguson puts 2 wins together, he's back in the title shot, albeit there's a long queue at the top of the division. Obviously, 2 fighters we think are going to fight the title out of that top 5, whether it's, Dustin and Conor, Chandler, Oliveira, Chandler, Gaethje. 2 of those are going to fight, with the belief that, Nurmagomedov does eventually relinquish that belt. Now, one way that we can spruce up Makhachev and Tony Ferguson, maybe this is, MMA fans dreaming, is it does give us a little limelight into that hope and dream of seeing Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, especially Nurmagomedov in the coaching and in the corner of Makhachev. If Tony Ferguson was to beat Makhachev, are you thinking he's not going to get on the mic calling out the champ who's sat, 10 meters away, let's say, who's probably in the cage already with Tony Ferguson? You face him off, easy money, and we book it for the 7th time. In fact, you know what? Make Khabib weigh in 155 on that Friday night. If Tony Ferguson wins him, we make that fight immediately, because they're going to be in the same round. Let's do 2 fights in one night, and let's just see what happens. But no, on a serious note, I do think Islam Makhachev versus Tony Ferguson is a match that probably gets Dan Hooker, if we're being realistic. But again, that fight against Tony Ferguson can give us that little bit of hope for a Khabib and Tony match in the future. Albeit everyone above Tony Ferguson will be very pissed off with that. But hey, this is MMA, and sometimes we just got to make a little business, and we need that fight to happen. Dominic Cruz, of course, back in the win column with a split decision win against Casey Kenny. He looked fantastic. He looked a lot better than he did against Henry Cejudo, but again, it was probably a much closer fight than he was expecting. Obviously, he'd taken a year out, but again, an all-round good performance of Dominic Cruz, and it was good to see him. His footwork was incredible. His calf kicks were incredible. He put in a fantastic all-round performance. Deserved the victory, I think, in my eyes. And it was a fantastic way to start the prelims. It was a fantastic card all night. We obviously just skipped over the Alexander Rakic, who beat Thiago Santos. It wasn't the best fight on the night. It wasn't the most competitive, but again, a good scrap. Alexander Rakic climbing up those light heavyweight rankings, deservedly so. Again, a win from him. Obviously, we've got to see what happens between Dominic Reyes and Yuri Prochazka. I think those are next in line after the Glover Teixeira Blachowicz fight. Obviously, got Rakic, beating Thiago Santos, who's on a 2-fight loss streak now, slipping down the rankings. But if you look at light heavyweight, Rakic is number 2 now. So yeah, Glover Teixeira, whoever wins that fight between him and Blachowicz should probably give Rakic next. But again, if Yuri Prochazka beats Dominic Reyes, maybe he skips Rakic in the queue, especially if it's on a knockout performance, you could say. And I think that's a 5-round fight as well, so that'd be good for him. Whereas Rakic obviously went 5 rounds with Anthony Smith, but he might need one more before we give him a title shot. For the rest of the card, obviously, Kyler Phillips beat Song Yadong, of course. Askar Askarov on a fantastic performance against Joseph Benavidez. Looked phenomenal. Put himself into the title shot after probably Figueiredo and Moreno. We're going to have to see that run back, of course. But it's an incredible division right now for lightweights. It's thriving, and unfortunately, Joseph Benavidez, on 3 losses, I think, in a row now. Obviously, he lost twice to the Figueiredo in those 2 title bouts, and now to Askar Askarov. So it is come towards the end, but again, someone asked him, apologies, I don't remember who it was. Someone asked Dana if it's time to have that conversation with Joseph Benavidez, and he abruptly said no. So we still got plans for Joseph Benavidez in the division, of course. Unlike the example used with Tyron Woodley, Donald Cerrone. Obviously, we've just seen Oda Junior dos Santos get released from the UFC. So Benavidez probably got 2 fights left in him this year, and maybe we see him retire towards the end of the year. Kai Kara France also in that division, of course, with a good win against Bunterin. A first-round KO victory, which he was probably down on the scorecards. They came back, got the victory. Of course, there was a little bit of questions about the finish. Herdine stepped in, but didn't quite wave it off. So, Kai Kara France doing a celebration, came back around to almost give it one more effort to put the nail in the coffin. But, he withheld himself and got a good win. Tim Elliott against Jordan and Espinoza, again, in that flyweight division. Phenomenal performance from him. Obviously, I got a bit dicey in there in that second round with a couple of conversations that were being had, and obviously he did apologise to Espinoza for it coming, almost over the broadcast. He didn't mean it like that, but again, good performance from Tim Elliott. He's someone I was surprised he wasn't ranked when I saw him fight. I was expecting to be in that top 15, that top 10 in that flyweight division, because he does bring it. Obviously, Kennedy Nzechukwu beat Carlos Ulberg by knockout. That was performance of the night, or fight of the night, I think. It got the bonus to that, both against TTK. Carlos Ulberg putting in a good performance for himself in his first UFC contest since becoming contracted him after that Contender Series win. He probably could have got that win in the first round, maybe got a bit overzealous, and eventually Nzechukwu got the win with a fantastic knockout victory. Sean Brady climbed to 14-0 against Jake Matthews again. Brilliant 3-round fight from him. He looked phenomenal tonight. He put Jake Matthews in some great positions, and he did get a submission in the end. Amanda Lemos got that beautiful jab KO against Levine Souza. Joris Medic put a flying knee knockout on Alan Cruz. That put him up for 7-0. And then lastly, Trevin Jones put a good KO to Mario Batista, and it was a fantastic, that whole early prelim that we saw. I think 6 fights on the early prelims up to Tim Elliott. Yes, phenomenal work from the guys. Obviously, the whole card formed on the night. They get a little bit dicey with the Aljamain Sterling, almost put a bit of taste in the mouth. But again, it was a special card, and we saw some special performances. And it's going to be interesting to see what's next from the fighters that we're probably going to see them again, probably June, July, maybe some sooner. Especially those early prelim guys who will probably step in on short notice on fights. Maybe or have very quick returns. Those who finished it in the first round. But yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I do apologize for doing this so late in the week. But again, I wanted to get it done before UFC Vegas 21, which I'm buzzing for as a UK fan, watching the Edwards fight again after so long. It's going to be good. Obviously, Bilal Muhammad is in there to cause the upset, perhaps. It's an okay card. Obviously, the card after the pay-per-view is always a bit of a downer because we've had so much action, so much sort of hype and presence. Whereas this card, it probably after 2009, probably deserves a little bit more of a push. But yes, I'm really there, guys. Make sure to hit that follow button if you're watching on Facebook and Twitch. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And I'll see you guys on Saturday for the preview for UFC Vegas 21.